For tens of thousands of years, the land had known only familiar footsteps. Life moved gently, guided by the seasons, the stars, and the stories passed from elder to child. The ocean had always been vast and powerful, but it was never feared. It was simply part of the world, a boundary that marked the edge of the known. Then one day, the horizon changed. Far beyond the blue line where sea met sky, strange shapes appeared. They were not clouds. They were not birds. They were something unknown, something never seen before. Slowly, silently, they moved closer. The first people stood along the shoreline, watching. Tall wooden structures floated on the water, their white sails glowing in the sunlight like wings of enormous creatures. The sea carried them forward, closer to the land that had been home for more than 60,000 years. These were the first European ships to reach Australia, arriving in 1606. The sailors came, observed the unfamiliar land, and left again. No settlements were built. No flags were raised. But the land remembered their arrival, and the silence of the ocean was broken forever. Years passed. Life continued as it always had. Stories were told, ceremonies were performed, and the land remained sacred. But the sea was not finished. In 1770, another ship appeared. This time, it did not simply pass by. On board was Captain James Cook, sent by Britain to explore, map, and claim. As his ship traced the eastern coastline, he wrote names onto maps, measuring the land with tools and numbers. To him, the land appeared empty. To its people, it was full of life, memory, and meaning. Without asking, without understanding, a claim was made. A flag was raised. With ink on paper, a decision was written that would change the future of the continent forever. 18 years later, the ocean returned again, this time carrying fate. In 1788, 11 ships sailed into Sydney Cove. They carried soldiers, officers, supplies, and hundreds of prisoners. Men and women taken from Britain, sent across the world as punishment. This fleet would mark the beginning of a new chapter. Australia became a penal colony. The convicts stepped onto unfamiliar soil, chains heavy on their bodies and fear heavy in their hearts. Behind them was the endless ocean. Ahead of them was a land harsh, strange, and unforgiving. Many had no idea if they would survive. Life was brutal. Food was scarce. The soil resisted European farming methods. The climate was unpredictable. Shelters were weak, and illness spread quickly. Survival was uncertain for everyone who had arrived. As the settlers struggled to build homes and grow food, the first peoples watched their world begin to change. Trees were cut. Rivers were disturbed. Land that had never been owned was suddenly fenced and claimed. At first, there was curiosity between the two worlds. Then confusion. Then fear. Languages could not be shared. Beliefs clashed. Sacred places were entered without permission. Disease arrived silently, spreading through indigenous communities that had no defense against it. This was not discovery. It was displacement. The land itself began to transform. Forests were cleared. Animals unknown to the continent were introduced. Fires burned differently. Rivers no longer flowed as they once had. The balance that had existed for thousands of years was broken. And yet, the land endured. And so did its first peoples. As days turned into years, and years into generations, Australia continued to change. The arrival of the ships marked the beginning of struggle, growth, loss, and resilience. Nothing would ever be the same again. But history does not erase memory. It carries it forward. As the sun set over Sydney Cove, the land remains silent, watching, remembering, and waiting for the next chapter to unfold.